It's a national security risk when you have somebody occupying the highest office of the land and they don't even know who they are.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you believe that Trump is the answer to all this madness. If he doesn't win, what is at stake?
The end of our country. We're living in a degenerate society where women are being told, don't go to school, don't get an education, don't work hard, take your clothes off and get on OnlyFans and take the easy way out. I find great inspiration in Donald Trump. This is a man who has been told from the beginning that he could never become president. He went on to become president, and not just any president, the greatest president our country has ever had. If Donald Trump does not win this election, and he's going to win, it's just a matter of whether they're going to steal the election or kill him before election day, this country is over.
You are somebody who has traveled, who has communicated, you have been behind the scenes with Trump. How would you describe him behind the scenes?
Well, it's great to be here. You know, I went to college in Miami. I went to Barry University. Yes. Got kicked out a month before graduation for being a conservative on campus. But it's great to be here and see so many energetic, mobilized young people on the first day of early voting. How many of you voted early today in Florida? Just one?
Should be more after this event,
Only
right?
One? Hopefully more after this event. Although I just got a notification while I was sitting there that the VR systems is down in the state of Florida. So hopefully our governor will get that situated.
We'll see about that. I wanted to ask you, right? I want to open up with this because I was like, well, you know, a lot of people have strong opinions about you, right?
Really?
I don't think so, but you know, I wanted to open up, and I said, you know what? I want to ask you this question because it's been on my mind. I really wanted. Maybe you've talked about it online, but I wanted to get your thought. Do you think everything that's happening with Joe Biden stepping down, Kamala getting into the race, not having any votes, yet being the front runner, you think all this was ordained and it was already planned?
I think we all knew for a very long time that Joe Biden was going to be replaced. I don't think that any of us thought that Joe Biden was actually going to be the Democrats' candidate for president. Many of us took bets online and we thought, oh, is it going to be Gavin Newsom? Is it going to be Michelle Obama? Right? There was a lot of discussion for quite some time about who the Democrat candidate was going to be, because even back in 2015, 2016, before the election, there were discussions about Joe Biden's mental competence. And if you recall, if you were politically active or politically involved back then, before the 2016 election, you saw people say, oh, well, that's just Joe Biden. You know, oh, he was known for making these grandfatherly-like gaffes. And Obama notoriously, famously said, never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to F things up, right?
He said that.
Yeah, that's a direct Obama quote. And so Joe Biden, the reason why Obama said what he said is because even when he was vice president under the presidency of Barack Hussein Obama, he was notorious for making gaffes. And the problem is with these neurological disorders and things like Alzheimer's and dementia, it's progressive. You don't just wake up one day and have dementia. This is something that takes place over, you know, it could happen over the span of 2 years, but a lot of people see it happen over the course of 8 to 10 years, and then they just progressively get worse. And now we've seen that, and unfortunately, we have people on the left and the right in our country who are quite politically irresponsible. I mean, if we're all being honest here, they probably should have invoked the 25th Amendment a long time ago, because regardless of whether or not you are a Democrat or Republican, it's a national security risk when you have somebody occupying the highest office of the land and they don't even know who they are. And that's not a joke. That's not to be funny. There are countless videos of Joe Biden not even knowing who he's introducing while he's speaking overseas. And so I think it's a national security issue. And well, they decided to, as Alex highlighted earlier, they decided to completely bypass the democratic system for a party that loves to accuse Donald Trump of being a threat to democracy. They installed a woman who received 0 votes, not just in 2020, right? She received 0 delegates, 0 votes in 2020 because she was so unlikable when she first ran for president, but also received 0 votes this time around because she didn't even participate in the primary process.
How many people in here, out of curiosity, how many people here are Cuban, born in Cuba, Cuban descent, just Cuban in general? Majority of the people. Most people would argue that Cuba is horrible with the communism, right? I've heard in conversations, I've heard online, I don't know if you've directly talked about it, I think it was Stone. I was watching a video, but nonetheless, the conversation of the communist ideologies are slowly being played. And I wanted to ask you, what has to happen for America to be even considered a communist country? Because I know that's a bit far out, but...
Oh, I don't think it's that far out. Kamala is a communist, and I'm really happy to see that over time, President Trump has reformed his speeches. He went from originally calling her dangerously liberal, radically liberal. And I always used to say, why would he say the term liberal? Because liberal doesn't mean what it used to mean. How many of you, when you were applying for college, were told by your college counselor in high school, you need to apply to a liberal arts university so that you could get a well-rounded education? I know that that's what I was told. And so the term liberal was supposed to be all-encompassing, values that the left, the radical left, doesn't support today, especially free speech. The concept of liberalism was supposed to be this democratic concept, right? That the Democrats claim that they support. But the key part of having a liberal society or a Democrat society is upholding free speech. And as we've seen, the Democrat Party has decided to make censorship and anti-free speech policies the defining policy of their agenda and their platform on a presidential level. I mean, we've seen that lawsuits filed by attorneys generals in our country have shown that the White House they actually directed the social media companies during the 2020 presidential election to silence people who were posting information about COVID. They falsely labeled, you had 51 intelligence officials in our country who abused their security clearances. They're the highest clearances you could have in this country to spew a partisan lie saying that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation when it was actually inserted as actual evidence in his own trial. So we already are experiencing elements of what it's like to live in a communist country, weaponization of government. I mean, you have judges who refuse to recuse themselves. I mean, one of the biggest stories I broke this election season was the fact that the judge who is overseeing President Trump's trial in New York City, who found him guilty on 34 counts, has a daughter who runs a political consulting firm. Okay, ironically, the judge is Latin himself, right? He's from Colombia, and you would think that a guy who came from Colombia and claimed to come from Colombia to escape what he would call third world practices, right? It's not like Central or South America is exactly known for having fair judicial systems, right? A lot of people flee these countries because of elements of communism. And so you would think that somebody like that would have more respect, especially being an immigrant, for our judicial system. But unfortunately, we see that they have allowed for this trial to take place, and they found Donald Trump guilty on 34 counts, even though the judge's daughter, Lauren Mershon, has a Democrat political consulting firm that raises hundreds of millions of dollars for top Democrats in our country, and including Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who she considers clients. So that is already an element of a communist society. Weaponized government, jailing your political opposition, jailing people for their free speech. You now have Democrat secretaries of states in places like Colorado and Michigan, and we've seen discussion of this in places like Georgia as well, where they're actually trying to create legislation and say that you will be jailed for misinformation and election interference if you use artificial intelligence to make memes during the election season. They tried to ban memes just a couple of months ago in California. So we already are. I would disagree with you when you say that we're far off from living in a communist country. I think that we already are experiencing a communist coup in our country, and we witnessed that with the stolen election of 2020.
Wow. It's a strong take. Let me ask you, you are somebody who has traveled, who has communicated, you have been, behind the scenes with Trump, right? You've flown with him, you've been at rallies with him, you've been at different places with him. So most of us in here, I would assume, we've never been with him, we've never met him, we've never had that conversation with him. How would you describe him behind the scenes? Is he as passionate? Is he somebody when you're behind the scenes like, man, this guy really cares? Like, how would you describe the behind the scenes
Absolutely.
with him?
So I've had the pleasure, I don't work for President Trump. I want to make that very clear, despite what the media says. I don't work for President Trump. I'm a supporter, and I've had the pleasure of being able to fly with him. I was invited by him to attend the presidential debate. So that was a great honor, and I'm a big supporter of President Trump. He enjoys my investigative journalism, and he likes my content. So he's known for inviting content creators and journalists to fly with him all the time. He watches a lot of podcasts, and you'll see that he's done a total media blitz. I mean, he's been doing it throughout his entire election, but every single week he's on another top trending podcast. And it's not because he's trying to get out the vote. That just is genuinely who Donald Trump is. He wants to know everything about everyone, everything about everything. And even when you're traveling with him on the airplane, you would think that, oh, this guy must want to take a rest. He's got a bed on the plane. No, I'm telling you right now, we started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't get done till, we didn't check in. The staff didn't check into their hotels till 3 o'clock in the morning after the
8 to
debate.
3.
Yes, after the debate.
Wow.
And then when we went to the 9/11 memorial, and then he's up at, 5, 6 in the morning the very next day, the same day, right? You do the math on that. So he has endless amounts of energy. Even after giving 3 rallies in one day, he's blasting Phantom of the Opera, listening to music on his airplane, watching the UFC fights. He has more energy than me, and I'm 31 years old. So Donald Trump is just as passionate in private as he is in public, and he's just so generous and humble. I was so happy yesterday that people got to see that side of him at McDonald's when he was, working the drive-through and working the fry line, because it's not an act. People thought, oh, this is staged. Oh, it's, he's just trying to be funny. He's trying to get under Kamala's skin. No, that's how he is. For a billionaire who has enough money to have a personal chef, he could eat filet mignon and lobster for every single meal. The guy seriously loves his McDonald's, loves his Jersey Mike's, loves everything. I mean, every single time I've flown on the plane, it's burgers, fries, chicken nuggets. That's how he eats most days of the week, and he loves it. It's not an inconvenience. And so that genuinely is who he is. He's very humble. He's the most generous, kind-hearted person. When he was in court being harassed by Judge Juan Merchan, I got a phone call from him while he was sitting in the courthouse on my 31st birthday. And this is a man who has to sit there and be attacked and have the most vile things said about him. And he took time out of his day while he was sitting in a courthouse to say, I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. I don't have much time, but I wanted to say happy birthday. I'm not an elected official. I don't work for him. The fact that he's always thinking about other people. Isn't that who we want in the White House? Somebody who's always thinking of others?
100%. So on that, right, and also going back a little bit to what you said previously, that communism isn't that far away, right? I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but you believe that Trump is the answer to all this madness. So let me ask you, if he doesn't win, what is at stake?
The end of our country as we know it. I mean, not to sound over dramatic, but this country is completely over. You will never see another Republican hold office on a local, state, or federal level if Kamala Harris is able to steal the election. And I say steal the election because there's no way in hell that anybody would overwhelmingly vote to elect that woman. She couldn't even win a primary. She didn't even participate in the primary. And you asked me, was this all coordinated? We all knew that something was afoot, whether it was Kamala, Michelle, or Gavin, or whoever. We knew that they were going to install somebody. And so they know that this is a woman who is so unlikable, she wasn't even able to garner a single vote in the Democrat primary when she ran against Joe Biden. He selected her as a DEI hire. She wasn't even selected. Alex said she slept her way to the top. That's right. She gave head to get ahead. She did. This is a woman who gave head to get ahead, and we need to acknowledge that. So it's just a fact. And the reality is one, it's not an appropriate lesson that we should be teaching other women. We shouldn't be telling women in this country, if you're a woman in the audience today and you are political, or you have political aspirations or any type of professional aspiration, that's not the kind of example that we should be setting for women, saying that if you get on your knees and you have an affair with a married man, which is exactly what happened, as graphic and as obscene as it may sound, that you too can become vice president of the United States. We're living in a degenerate society where women are being told, don't go to school, don't get an education, don't work hard, take your clothes off and get on OnlyFans and take the easy way out. You do not need to sexualize yourself. You don't need to show your body. You don't need to sleep with anybody in order to get to the top. You see me? Look, I'm not even wearing a dress today. I'm wearing pants and a blazer. This is how I dress every day. And, I got started as the president of College Republicans when I was at Barry University in Miami. And I didn't grow up with a, silver spoon in my mouth, and I didn't have any political connections. I wanted to become the president of College Republicans. I got involved, just like Ryan did, on his college campus. And the College Republican Club at my university was nearly non-existent, and I reinvigorated it. And eventually, was able to find myself working for the Fox affiliate in Miami, and then I started working for James O'Keefe my senior year of college and got kicked out for standing strong for my conservative values and exposing the left-wing bias at my university. And it doesn't matter whether you're called a Nazi, whether you're called a racist, whether you're called a bigot, whether you have urine splashed on you by Antifa. It's happened to me before. That's why I use it as an example. There's going to be a lot of people that try to tell you that you're wrong, that you are mental, that there's something wrong with you, that you're going to ruin your career if you keep saying the things that you want to say. You're probably experiencing that right now with your professors. I find great inspiration in Donald Trump. This is a man who has been told from the beginning that he could never become president. They mocked him during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Remember that? Remember when Barack Obama made him the butt of his joke during the dinner? And he said, Donald Trump thinks that he's going to run for president, and Donald Trump was sitting in the audience.
Yes.
Exactly. So this is a man who was told from the beginning that he could never win a primary. He won the primary. That he could never become president. He went on to become president. And not just any president, the greatest president our country has ever had. He could be living a billionaire lifestyle, sitting at home with his gorgeous supermodel wife, playing golf on one of his many golf courses around the world that he has, beautiful properties. But this is a man who literally took a bullet for democracy. The Democrats say that he is a threat to democracy. He took a bullet for you. So the least you could do is show up and vote for the man. And I hope, how many of you are registered to vote in this room? I hope that all of you registered to vote.
Oh, wow.
Okay, wow. So pretty much everybody here is registered to vote. How many of you have a plan to vote? Early voting, raise your hand. Mail-in voting, raise your hand. Election day voting, raise your hand. Okay, so you have to get everybody you know to get out and vote for Donald Trump. You just have to. Because if Donald Trump does not win this election, and he's going to win, it's just a matter of whether they're going to steal the election or kill him before election day, this country is over. Those of you who fled communist country, I know you said there's a lot of Cubans in the room here, you might as well go back. Because the oppression that you fled from is the oppression that you're going to experience here. Because as Donald Trump always says, the only thing that's standing in between me and you, or you and them, is me. And he's right. If they can persecute Donald Trump, if they can jail and take a mugshot of the most powerful man in the world, and they can tie him up in court in the middle of an election season, what do you think they can do to you? If they can terrorize a billionaire and his family and institute $480 million judgments against him, rig his elections, debank him, silence him, shut him down, ban him on every single social media site.
Assassinate him.
Try to assassinate him, and then deny him extra Secret Service protection after he and his campaign ask for it. Do you really honestly think they're going to think twice about knocking on your door, banging down your door, jailing you, killing you? This is the conversation that we need to have. It's a battle between good versus evil. As the sponsor of this event, and thank you for sponsoring this event, I appreciate it. As you said, it's a battle between good versus evil. This is far beyond a partisan difference between Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, right-wingers versus left-wingers. This is about people who want to exterminate our country, exterminate the Constitution, and exterminate all things good and pure as we know it. and those who want to protect it.
I want to pin a thought. You just said, right, going back, some people in the crowd, I know if there's people from the other side on the crowd that say, how could she just say what she said? She said Kamala gave head to get ahead. How could she say that?
She did.
But I want to add something to that. The media will portray, well, that's very graphic. How could she say that? Yet there's people on street preaching LGBTQ, going out in a thong, naked on the streets, desensitizing our kids to what sex is supposed to be.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say that Kamala Harris, gave head to get ahead, but Kamala Harris is allowed to invite a bunch of tranny TikTok stars to the White House who take their bras off and shake their fake tits on the White House lawn. Okay, you are not allowed to say Kamala Harris gave head to get ahead, but she's allowed to push for the sterilization of minors who wake up one day and decide that they want to be, they're born biological girls, they want to be little boys. Are you going to send your 5-year-old to the slaughterhouse if they wake up and say, Mommy, I'm a cow? No, you're not. So are you going to give gender hormone transitioning drugs to a child? That's graphic, in my opinion. So, that's another problem with our country today is we've seen that people are not even allowed to speak truth to power. You're not even allowed to talk about scientific facts. You can't talk about biology. You can't talk about things that are undeniably true and have been from the creation of time, since the creation of man and woman.
You can't talk about what's a man or a woman.
You can't talk about it. You can't even talk about what is a man or a woman because Kamala Harris and her party can't even define what a woman is. So, do we really want to live in a country where people are threatened, fired, attacked, demonized, hated, smeared, judged, ostracized for speaking facts? I mean, look, I know that there were people here who have disagreements. Not everybody in this room is probably a Republican. I'm sure there's people in here that don't like Donald Trump, but can we all just agree that we're happy that we can be here and nobody's throwing cups of water, cups of piss, nobody's shouting over each other. We're having a respectful, peaceful conversation. And I truly fear that if Kamala Harris is able to get another 4 years in the White House, and I say another 4 years because let's be honest, Kamala Harris is Joe Biden and Joe Biden is Kamala Harris, and she has been running the show for the last 4 years. Joe Biden is mentally unfit, and everybody has seen it. Everybody has seen it. He had a medical emergency on Air Force One. It's been confirmed by audio tapes that have since been acquired from police departments in Las Vegas. Okay, this is a man who's unfit, and Kamala Harris and Jill Biden have been making the decisions. Unelected political bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. have been driving our country, driving your future, driving your children's future and your grandchildren's future into the ground. And so even if you don't like Donald Trump as a person, you have a moral obligation and a responsibility to get out and vote for him because he's the only candidate on the ballot that is actually fighting to protect the principles and the values that are allowing us to sit here today to have this conversation. Kamala Harris wants to create policies that would allow for the FBI to round several of the speakers up today and charge us with crimes of misinformation and disinformation because misinformation and disinformation has now been defined as anything the political opposition or the political elites in power disagree with. And so if you support freedom of expression and you support free speech and you support peaceful discourse, you should be supporting Donald Trump whether you like his personality or not.
Clap for that. I want to share some names that you've been called online, and I want to get your take on it.
Oh, wow, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, it's actually the whole page. No,
we're going to be here all day.
So, far right.
Yeah.
That's the best.
I'm called far right because I'm always right. I'm always right.
That was. I started off with the easiest one. That was not the worst one. Conspiracy theorists, white nationalists, racists. Yeah. This one doesn't make sense, but anti-Semitic. You're Jewish. Doesn't make sense. Nazi. I thought that one was fascinating.
Yeah, I'm a Jewish Nazi.
So let me ask you.
I'm a Jewish Nazi, you guys. Make sure you stay to get your autograph at the end from a Jewish Nazi.
Does it bother you the way people talk about you?
Look, I mean, at this point in time, I'm used to it. It's irritating. It's annoying. It's obnoxious. I don't like the fact that people have tried to carry out acts of violence against me, and I have to look over my shoulder everywhere I go because people have actually been whipped up into a frenzy to the point of sending death threats or demonizing me to the point where there's people in our country and people around the world who think I should die simply because of my views, which aren't even my views, because they have been so grossly misconstrued and misrepresented by the media. So at the end of the day, if I allowed for every single idiotic comment or nasty thing that's said about me to get me down, well, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed in the morning because you can't care about what other people say about you. Am I sad at times? Yeah, I'm a human, of course, and I'm a woman, and everybody has feelings, and I don't like when people say nasty things about me, but you just have to get over it, and you have to not internalize it, because at the end of the day, the only opinion that should really matter to you is your own opinion. Really, that's all that matters, is your own opinion. If you're happy with yourself and you believe in your purpose, and you're fighting for a purpose that you believe in, who cares what people say about you? Somebody once told me, you could be the peachiest peach in the world, but there's always going to be somebody out there that hates peaches. So who gives a shit? And that's what I tell young people. I used to be so self-conscious when I was in college, really, believe it or not. I was anxious about speaking in public. I had self-esteem issues, and I was just an anxious person in college, really. And it took me some time to kind of break out of my shell, believe it or not. I swear to God. I know some people may not believe that. But nobody's perfect. And you just have to be comfortable. In order to truly believe in your message and truly believe in the fight that you're fighting for, you really have to be comfortable with yourself. And the first step to feeling comfortable with yourself is not giving a shit about what other people think about you. And that's the key to being successful. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to have a startup company, whether you're trying to start a new publication, whether you're launching a social media account. There's going to be haters. There's going to be people that tell you you can't do it. There's going to be people that look for the negative in you. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You're too ugly. Your voice is weird. You do this. You do that. There's always going to be people out there that find something to pick at you for. And I just look at Donald Trump again as an inspiration. This is a man who is attacked every single day, okay? He has attained higher levels of success than most of us in this room will ever attain in our lives. Hopefully, we can reach his level. He's a billionaire. He's married to a supermodel. He has beautiful children, beautiful grandchildren, multiple businesses, became president of the United States. And every single day there's people who attack him. He could find the cure for cancer. And there's still going to be people out there that find something to attack him over. So I would just encourage people to not really care about what people say about you.
So this is going to be a selfish question, because a follow-up to that, because I value what you're about to say, because I'm obviously in media. I want to grow. I want to do more live events. Whether people like you or not, people can all agree that you are comfortable in your own skin. Because if you weren't, you would stop talking online. You would stop, the media would stop portraying. You would just stop. But you're comfortable in your own skin. How does somebody get to that level where I really don't care what you call me. I really don't care what you think about me.
You have to become somebody who has nothing left to lose. And you have to decide whether you care about money or whether you care about your purpose. And for me, and I wrote a book about this, I had everything taken from me. I had a very successful media company, and I was on track to, get millions of dollars in investments for media ventures that I was launching. And then one day I woke up and a couple billionaires in Silicon Valley decided that they didn't like what I had to say, and they digitally exterminated me. I went from having millions of followers across various social media platforms and, having a very large following, making a pretty decent amount of money, to getting banned on every single site and having a Wikipedia page that branded me as a Nazi, a white supremacist. I mean, you name it. Every single name in the book, they call me. And at the end of the day, I could have just gone away and said, oh, it's, not worth it anymore. And, trust me, it's cost a lot of money suing the big tech social media companies, running for Congress, and trying to attain political power for the sake of, going after these social media companies to fight for free speech at a time when people on the left and the right, not just the left, but many Republicans thought that this idea of social media censorship and deplatforming and election interference was just a conspiracy theory, right? It's mainstream now, but there was a point in time, especially when I was really the canary in the coal mine along with Alex Jones, when all this censorship happened, that it was very hard to even get conservatives to support your cause because, people don't really care about things until it happens to them. And you have to decide whether you're going to be one of those people that only cares about something when it happens to you, whether you're going to be one of those people that only cares about putting money in your pocket, making a profit, or whether you're going to dedicate yourself to a purpose and a cause that's greater than any amount of money, any price tag, or any type of position or title that you could ever have in your life. And once you get comfortable doing that, you can do anything. You can do anything you want. People told me that I would never be able to win a congressional primary because I was banned on social media. I was the first deplatformed candidate in United States history, and I won a primary and raised nearly $3 million when I ran for Congress all by myself. People said that I would never be able to, be taken seriously in right-wing political media or politics because of all the nasty things that people said. I just flew with the President of the United States to the presidential debate. So never let anybody tell you that you can't do something or that you're too, whatever, fill in the blank, to accomplish your dreams. There's always going to be people who tell you that you can't do something, and it's not a reflection of yourself, it's a reflection of their own self-limitations. Because when people tell you that you can't do something, they're telling you that they know that they can't do something, and it's usually rooted in jealousy and a sense of self-worthlessness. And it takes time. It takes practice. I'm not just going to say, I was, born this way and this happened to me overnight. No, I definitely struggled, and I wrote about it in my book. There were times I wanted to give up. There were times where I said, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth it. I just want to, give up and go away. And you feel really down in the dumps. But I promise you, as long as you keep on working, you do not have to be rich. You do not have to have an official title. You do not have to have an official position. If you work hard and you have a purpose that is greater than yourself, greater than any price tag, and you are driven by your desire for the greater good as opposed to a desire to put money in your pocket, there's nothing wrong with capitalism, don't get me wrong. You will succeed and you will make a difference and you will accomplish your goals.
I think CNN should hire you as a motivational speaker. They should. I don't know. Guys, I want to open up the floor. Anybody have questions? So we have one. Jake, can you pass up 3 questions? Give it.
Good afternoon. My name is Melanie. It is such a pleasure having you here. I want to say that I am embarrassed that at some point in my life, I was against Trump. And I blame that to the social media, but if it wasn't for my educated, legally immigrant father, and I want to emphasize on legally because that's how much you respect this country, if it wasn't for him, I would have not been voting for Trump today. And not everybody has that type of example in their life, and anybody could be easily influenced by the socials, people overall. So what is your message for those people who are brainwashed in this society?
It's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not an alcoholic, I don't even drink, but what do they say when you go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting? The first step to addressing your problem or solving your problem is admitting you have a problem. And so I want to thank you, and you should give yourself a round of applause for having the courage to admit that you were once anti-Trump and that you saw the light. Because a lot of people are too proud to admit that they were wrong or too proud to admit that they made a mistake. And nobody's perfect, right? Luckily, I've always been pro-Trump, so I don't have that issue. I've always been a conservative. But not everybody in our country was a Trump supporter. Not everybody in our country was a Republican, and we need those people in order to win this election. And so I think that you're doing a great job now by coming to events, listening to speakers, taking advice from your own father, and just admitting that you were wrong. Right? Admitting that you were wrong and that you, I guess, either falsely judged President Trump or that you believe things that were not true. But I would encourage people to do their own investigating. As an investigative journalist, I promote citizen journalism a lot. And I think that the mainstream media is really being replaced. And a lot of that has to do with the resurgence of independent media platforms, social media platforms, especially now with Elon Musk purchasing X and Chris Pavlovsky, of course, over at Rumble, creating Rumble, free speech sites, Truth Social, President Trump's site. And so do your own research. Don't be afraid to go out there and investigate a story yourself or seek out the truth on your own, because I can guarantee you, whether it's Fox, CNN, MSNBC, you name it. It doesn't matter whether it's right-wing media or left-wing media. They're all full of shit. They are. They're all lying to you. And it's the independent media and the citizen journalists, the independent people out there with a cell phone and a social media account that are breaking most of the most impactful stories that are happening right now in our current political season and also just around the world. I mean, look around at the content that you get every single day and the videos that are going viral and the places you're getting your news from. Raise your hand if it's mostly mainstream media sites. Is it mostly mainstream media sites? Yeah? Or are they videos and clips from people who have TikTok accounts or people who have Instagram accounts or Twitter accounts? Most of the news I get online today is from people that are just sharing stories. Look at what just happened with the hurricanes in Florida and North Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia. Most of the content out there that forced the media to start addressing these issues was video posted by everyday Americans on their own social media. So don't be afraid to utilize the power in your own fingertips, the power of social media, the power of speaking truth to power. And that's something that I encourage all of you to do, whether you want to have a career in journalism, whether you want to have a career in politics, whether you want to have an organization, or you're just, finding your own path, doing your own thing, pursuing another route in life. We all need to be the source of our own truth and speaking truth to power if we are going to influence others and educate others and bring others into seeing the light.
Love that. Next question. We have one more after him. Delano there in the back. Then we'll get two more.
Hi. So you talked a little bit about what happened to you at Barry University, so that's not so far away from
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
At what point should we keep certain clubs off of campus, right? So right now at FIU, they actually fund a club called YDSA, Young Democratic Socialists of America, and they invite people who worked in Cuban prisons to torture people and whatnot. They do all sorts of great things like that and invite these people to our campus. So at what point should we, I also don't think we should have an ISIS club. But
right. Well, and it's interesting you brought that up because that's the social experiment that I got expelled from college for exposing. And I wanted to ask that same question of the administration. So as the president of College Republicans, I was threatened with expulsion because there's an organization called Young Americans for Liberty, and they do this project every single year around 9/11 where they ship posters that show images, like very graphic images on poster boards of the attacks, the September 11th Islamic terrorist attacks that took the lives of nearly 3,000 Americans, but also the Benghazi attacks, okay? September 11th as well. And so I had posted all these posters on campus, and I had spoken out about the fact that my university on 9/11 invited an imam from an Islamic terror-tied mosque to chant Allahu Akbar. And so because I spoke out about that and said that it was basically the equivalent of having a Klansman carry a Confederate flag down the road during a Martin Luther King Day parade, they said, well, you're very racist and you're very disrespectful towards the Muslim students on campus, and we're going to expel you if you keep this activity up. So I said, okay, so it's really interesting. They're willing to shut down the College Republican Club. They actually threatened to shut my club down because I was doing voter registration on campus and because I was speaking out about terror-tied speakers coming to the campus. And it was a Catholic university. I'm Jewish, but I went there. I got a really good scholarship. And, so as somebody who had to pay for college myself, my parents didn't pay for my school, I was willing to go to a Catholic university if I could get a good scholarship. And so I thought to myself, first of all, it's a Catholic university. You don't even need to be having Islamic interfaith on campus. But if you're going to have Islamic interfaith on campus, are you really going to invite a jihadi imam who is from a mosque where they're tied to terrorist organizations? And this was undeniable. I showed the university the information. So I ended up teaming up with James O'Keefe, and I had this idea. I said, let's see if they would allow for an ISIS club. And it was a really outrageous idea, and I wore a hidden camera, and I went to the university officials, and I said, okay, well, I want to start a student club called Sympathetic Students in Support of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And, desperate people do desperate things, and I want to use student government money, because how much money can I get to have a student club each month? They said, well, you can get $500. I said, great. I'm going to send that money to ISIS terrorists. Is that okay? And I said, don't tell me that I'm wrong, because, you guys are oppressors. And, I just really amped it up to make it sound as social justice warrior as possible, okay? And I had all these administrators on camera, even the director of the honors program, who told me, it's okay if you're sending money overseas to ISIS. They actually tried telling us in one of our classes one day that ISIS terrorists deserve sympathy because of the way that the United States government has been imperialistic. And so that's how I got the idea to start this club. Long story short, they signed off on me having an ISIS club and said that I could send money to ISIS. But they told me, be sure you change the name to Students in Support of the Middle East so that nobody knows you're sending money to ISIS. And so I released this video on purpose to expose the university, to show them, okay, there's discrimination. You're going to threaten to shut me down for raising awareness about Islamic terrorism, an attack that took the lives of 3,000 Americans on 9/11, but you're going to allow for, hypothetically speaking, a potential ISIS club to take place on campus. And instead of firing the professors that signed off on the ISIS club, I was expelled, okay? I was supposed to be valedictorian. I had a 4.0 GPA, and I was expelled from college for creating this mock ISIS club to expose the leftist hypocrisy on my campus. And so that's an issue that's really dear to my heart, because you're right. At what point do we say that is not free speech? The United States Constitution and the First Amendment does not allow for aiding and abetting terrorist organizations. It does not allow for protections for incitement to violence. And so I would say we draw the line at any organization that is inciting violence or promoting terrorist activity. And we've seen that we've had a lot of issues with that on college campuses, where you have Muslim students at SJP and all these Marxist students protesting support for Israel, and they are tied to terrorist organizations. Student for Justice in Palestine is an organization that is known to raise money for Hamas. They have been found, their organizers and their founders are found to be raising money for Hamas, and a lot of these communist student organizations, I'm not familiar with the one you're talking about, but if you are inviting speakers who are openly advocating for a communist takeover of the United States of America, for the support of torturing people for political reasons, or inciting or raising money for terrorist activity, both foreign and domestic, you shouldn't be allowed to have your event on campus. You just shouldn't. It's a safety issue at that point in time for other students. It's also a national security risk. So I would say you draw the line with incitement of political violence and raising money, the concept of aiding and abetting both foreign and domestic enemies.
Two more questions. Blue shirt right there.
Hey, I'm Mike Ross. I'm a conservative comedian based here in Florida.
Nice to meet you.
Not an oxymoron. My question is, you talked about censorship.
Yeah.
Kamala's sent thousands of her political opponents to prison, including Douglas Mackey.
Yeah.
You probably know Ricky Vaughn. Thousands of political prisoners from January 6th, and myself included. I'm going to prison in a few weeks, unfortunately.
For what?
Kamala, for a made-up accusation, but for speaking out against the regime the last
Well,
year.
take a moment to tell everybody, because there's some people in here who are voting for Kamala, and Douglas Mackey, of course, was a guy who made a meme. You could tell the story if you want, but there are people in this country who are currently sitting in prison because they made memes about the 2016 election. So when I say that they are trying to jail people for making memes, if you have a TikTok or you have an Instagram and you share a meme, just know that you could go to jail, okay, under the Kamala Harris administration if you post something that they think is not a joke. And so I want to give you an opportunity to tell people, because I'm sure it's a really absurd reason in violation of your First Amendment rights, the reason why you're going to jail. So please, if you don't mind, tell people why you're going to jail.
Well, briefly, you could go to commutemic.com, COMMUTE Mike.com. But for 9 years, they've been going after me, the Obama and Biden administration. Just tore my life apart, civilly and criminally. But they've done it to thousands of people. And my question is more about, why hasn't there been more talk about this during the campaign? We see Marjorie Taylor Greene, we see Mackey from Kentucky, Massey, talk about it, but most of the congressmen and senators are spineless on this issue.
On the issue of political persecution.
Political persecution, they're stepping away from it. They sidestep it during any of the senatorial debates, the presidential debates. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they're so spineless on this? Tulsi Gabbard talked about that in this presentation.
They're cowards, and you can't expect the government to come save you. And I'll just say, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. Majority of the representatives in office, whether they're Republican or Democrat, they're controlled, as Alex said earlier too. So these people only care about themselves. Barely any of them supported Donald Trump. I mean, look, we're sitting here in a university in Florida where the governor of Florida, the Republican governor of Florida, was a no-name congressman who got his career started because Donald Trump saved him in a primary where he was about to lose his ass, okay? He never would have been governor, and he had the audacity to stab the man in the back who gave him his political career, okay? This is a guy who was a former prosecutor who supported the weaponization of government against the man who gave him his political career. I'm talking about Ron DeSantis, okay? He stabbed Donald Trump in the back, and he's supposedly called the most conservative governor in our country. If you're going to have a guy who's called the most conservative governor in the country not even stand up against political persecution and enable the political persecution as a way to attain political power, what does that say about every other Republican who isn't as conservative as our so-called conservative governor here in Florida, right? These people are weak. They're cowards. They barely stood up for Donald Trump. None of them showed up to support him at his trial until the very last week when he was found guilty on 34 counts by this communist judge whose daughter is making millions of dollars representing and fundraising for key Democrats. So it's terrible what's happened to you, but unfortunately, you're not going to see Republicans speak out about this issue because these people are scared of their own shadow. If they're not going to fight for Donald Trump, they're not going to fight for you. But you know who is going to fight for you is Donald Trump. Donald Trump knows what it's like to be falsely accused, to have to take a mugshot. He's been arrested. He's been shot. He knows what it's like to have to go to a jail cell because of weaponized government. Okay, he's going to pardon the January 6ers when he gets into office. And I don't know about your situation, but I know that Donald Trump is not going to tolerate the political persecution of American citizens. And I know that this is something that's very near and dear to his heart. And you can count on the Donald Trump DOJ when he gets back into office to investigate and help Americans. I can't say every single person because I'm sure there's millions of them who have been wrongfully targeted. I mean, I've been wrongfully targeted. I'm on watch lists, okay? Been red flagged by the FBI for being a Trump supporter. I didn't even do anything wrong. I questioned James Comey at his book signing. So I feel your pain, but the only candidate who is actually going to fight for criminal justice reform and fight against weaponized government is the man who knows what it's like. Donald Trump.
Last one here.
Hi, Laura. I just want to start off by saying I really appreciate you coming out here and talking to us.
Yeah, of
I also
course.
wanted to ask you a question about Donald Trump's immigration plan. Because I know he's promised mass deportations, which is awesome. That's great. But when people actually press him on it, from what I've heard, all he said is that he would have local law enforcement handle it. And he would empower local law enforcement. I think that that's a great start, but if you're only allowing local law enforcement to do the deportations, don't you think that illegal immigrants will just go to sanctuary cities or even just Democrat states in general?
I'm not sure where you heard that he only wants to have local law enforcement, because he talks a lot about how he's going to fund ICE and how he's going to work with Tom Homan, who was the former director of ICE, so that he can give ICE unlimited resources to carry out these mass deportations. I mean, he's talked about how he's going to create Operation Aurora so that they can round up and use military force against illegal aliens. So he has talked about militarizing our border, which is not a local police effort, that is a federal effort. So I'm not sure where you heard that about him only using local law enforcement, but I think that it's probably an effort in conjunction with ICE, federal agencies, to carry out mass deportations, because there's no way that you can have mass deportations without a massively funded federal operation, which he's talked about. He's talked about militarizing our border. He's talked about utilizing ICE, and he recently just announced Operation Aurora while he was speaking in Aurora, Colorado, to address these armed Venezuelan illegal alien gangbangers who are taking over apartment buildings and terrorizing people. So you're definitely going to see federal action. Again, I don't work for President Trump. I don't speak for him, but I know in listening to most of his speeches and his rallies that he 100% is going to be funding ICE to the fullest extent.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you're probably right. That is something that is espoused very much so online. So if that's not true, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Jay, one question over there. Last question.
Hi, Laura. First, just wanted to say thank you to you and Ryan and Alex for doing what y'all do, and Jacob, of course, for putting on this event. I think that it's really important for young college students to hear this kind of conversation. I was actually in college during COVID. A lot of the professors got together, wanted every student to either be vaccinated, if not, take a test or before every class, all that crazy stuff. Then I get to corporate America, where now every month there is a DEI initiative that's being pushed. So I think that it's very frustrating that there's not some sort of like opt-out, I guess, where you don't have to sit there and listen to Pride Month, where they have literal transgenders come and talk about how hard their transition was. I'm in IT sales. I don't really care to hear about that.
You bigot. Sit down, you bigot.
And Pride Month, whatever, but I just feel like it's just such an issue that a lot of people don't realize that it does start in college, but then once you get to corporate America, it's even worse. So
It does, it really does.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating to deal with, because you have to kind of be the silent, not even majority, but, especially being a woman in my office, a lot of the other women that are my age are very liberal. And if I were to say, oh, I support Trump, or even post my boyfriend on my story, I get dirty looks at work. So I just think it's very unfair, of course, but do you think that corporate America will always be like this because it's a publicly traded company and the government tells them to do that, or how can we fight against that?
I think that with President Trump getting back into office, there's going to be a culture shift. And I already am really inspired by the fact that so many podcasts and even just seeing Saturday Night Live the other night, to use a cultural example, is now mocking Kamala Harris. And that's a sign that even the most liberal, left-wing institutions and media entities are now realizing, okay, if we don't do a massive shift, we're going to go completely bankrupt. And you're going to see that companies are going to be forced, whether they like it or not. And you're already seeing it across corporate America. Different corporations and institutions, car dealerships, okay, media companies, getting rid of their DEI policies because they're being exposed and they are facing societal and political pressure. And I don't think that these companies are going to, especially the CEOs for these major tech companies, you're already seeing a shift where a lot of them are starting to speak out and express libertarian or center-right views. Even Mark Zuckerberg, as an example, not saying I believe him or trust him, but you're going to see these people know that under a Trump administration, they will face massive backlash and boycotts if they allow for this, toxic cultural Marxist poison to seep into the workplace. It's not going to be tolerated, and you're actually going to have a DOJ that is going to look into lawsuits filed by people when they actually go to their state's attorneys generals, or they go to the attorney general and they file workplace discrimination lawsuits. These are things that we have laws on the books for in this country. And hopefully when President Trump is back in office, we can have a conversation on a federal level about including political affiliation as a protected class and update our civil rights laws so that we can protect people from political discrimination. That's something that I would like to see the next attorney general do under a second Trump administration, because too many people, whether it's vaccine mandates or people being fired for being pro-Trump or being fired for being conservative or not wanting to support these DEI initiatives in the workplace, they've been fired and they've been demonized. And I would really like to see a push on a federal level for political affiliation to be included as a protected class so that people can be protected and have their civil rights upheld and not be discriminated against for being conservative or Democrat, right? You shouldn't be discriminated against for your political views in a sane America. But we're seeing that.
Yes.
And the people who are carrying this out are not conservatives.
Yeah, and it's scary too, because it honestly is like brainwashing. I'm not even kidding you. There's a
Oh, it is.
Teams channel that is committed to pride at, company, blacks at whatever company. Like, there's no whites, there's no straight group, and it's just sort of like, why do I have to sit here and go through that? And then we're also bringing politics to the office as well by constantly pushing that stuff. It's very frustrating. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts were, and thank you again for.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that you're going to see a cultural shift, and a lot of people in media, they're going to have to adjust, and a lot of people in corporate America are going to have to adjust, because we're no longer, I was never silent, but this whole concept of a silent majority, right? I don't think I could ever really be silent. It's becoming foreign. And how many podcasters now and comedians and talk show hosts and people in the media are you seeing come out and rock a MAGA hat or openly talk about their support for Trump? It's not as taboo as it used to be. It used to be a nonstop news cycle where they would perpetuate cancel culture against comedians or actors or celebrities for coming out and saying they support Trump. People are exhausted. Okay, they have beaten this horse dead. It is beyond dead. And people just don't care anymore. It's like calling people a racist or a Nazi. Unfortunately, right, when you misuse terms that actually have a meaning, or you abuse policies that are supposed to exist for going after people who have poor performance in the workplace, sexual harassment in the workplace, or things that actually matter in the workplace, nobody's going to care anymore. It's not going to have any meaning. And I do think that they have made people culturally numb to the point where they don't care about expressing their political viewpoints in public anymore. And corporate America is going to have to get on board with that, or they're going to face boycotts. They're going to get the Bud Light treatment.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Laura Loomer.
Thank you.